Before we get into today's episode, I want to let you know that this conversation covers some sensitive topics. So you may wish to tune in another time if you're around children or you aren't feeling resourced for a heavy conversation. Emily shares her perspective and experience of a past relationship, and we specifically discuss coercive control and financial abuse. This conversation is shared in the public interest to raise awareness. Please listen with care. If you are affected by anything in this episode, support is available and details and helpline numbers are in the show notes.
I remember going down to visit my sister in London and standing on London Bridge and feeling like my arm was missing. It was as if a part of myself was not there. And that was just so strange. And it took a long time to feel like I was in control of me, like having the freedom to do what I wanted and to go where I wanted and see who I wanted was overwhelming. Like I just didn't know what to do with that.
Money is never just about money. It's about who we are, what we've been through, and the systems we live within. And that's what we talk about here on the Money Story Project. This is a storytelling project about money and what it means to be human. These are real stories from real people, and the power of saying, this is what happened, this is my story. For people in business, founders, creatives, freelancers, but really anyone who's ever been made to feel bad with money or wondering why interactions with money have felt the way that they do. I'm Harriet Formby, a chartered accountant, fractional CFO and trauma-informed finance coach. We invite people to tell their own money stories. We also bring in subject matter experts who share both their lived experience and their professional wisdom, helping us make sense of what we've carried and our path forward. Today, I'm joined by Emily Armitage. Emily is a CEO and founder of the Yorkshire Zen Company and human design business coach and strategist for six-figure female founders. I'm delighted to welcome Emily for our conversation today.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
Likewise. So, first of all, I'd like to just open with asking you a little bit about your early experiences with money and what was the sort of dynamic around finances when you were growing up?
Oh, that's an interesting one. So my parents are both from a working class background. My dad's family is probably more like upper working class, or they like to think of themselves as more middle class. They had more money, I guess, different sort of jobs, different sort of like newspapers they read, different sorts of activities, all those sorts of things. And so they both brought their money stuff into our family dynamic. And then me and my sister were obviously swimming in that growing up. My mum's family didn't have a lot of money at all. But she kind of took that as fuel and really, really made her career a very big focal point. And so over the course of like my childhood, we went from not having much money at all to having a fairly decent standard of living. So that was quite interesting growing through that. I remember there was a lot of conversations where my dad would worry about money and my mum would be trying to reassure him. And she was very much in control of the household finances. But it was very much, there was this undercurrent of stress and undercurrent of worry and will we have enough money to live, basically, which we always did, but it always felt that there was a very stressful side to it. And it was kind of always positioned like the adults have the money and we have to ask for it. I remember when I was about 5, I created a jobs list. It's still up at the kitchen at my mum and dad's of like household jobs I would do and how much how much I would charge for them. So like pennies, like hoovering and taking my sister to the toilet, which was obviously not something I wanted to do because I charged very highly for that.
Brilliant.
So I've always been quite aware of money and understanding that you worked for money and other people gave it to you, but that there was probably a lot of stress around it. So I think that's probably the dynamic summed up from being quite small. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And there's that side of kind of when there was sort of struggle around money. And then when you come into a situation where there's more money around, it's almost like you can't necessarily trust it because it could go again and we could be back to where we were before. Yeah. And then that's the stress of, can we trust this situation?
Absolutely. And I think as well, my dad's dad, so my granddad was an accountant. So he was very much like, keeping a ledger and making sure that like accounting for the ins and outs. And then my dad totally outsourced all the money stuff to my mom. So then he was panicking about it. So yeah, it was an interesting dynamic. But I think we all have that, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's something that I guess it definitely comes up, and it's almost like it's interesting as well, actually, that it was your mum, being in charge of the money, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And then when we were preparing for this call, I know you'd mentioned that it was kind of your earlier sort of childhood, and then you had an experience that really impacted almost like what you do now, which I'd love you to share a bit more about what happened.
Absolutely. So I was in a really toxic relationship, and I didn't have the words for it then, but now I know that it was very coercive. There was a lot of coercive control, and part of that was financial control as well. And when I say that, people will be like, oh, imagining he took my bank accounts away or he withdrew my cards or something like that. And it wasn't, it was far more subtle than that. And I think understanding what coercive control actually involves and the kind of the real subtleties around it, there's certain things I reflect back on that relationship. And I don't really twig what was actually going on until years and years later. And I should say, this is a long time ago now. But the impact of that and the impact of that relationship was so deep rooted. And I know what it is like to not have financial control, financial power of your own, the choices, the opportunities, the decisions you can make when you have your own money and you're in control of that money. And so that really is a big driver for my work today, because I want more money in the hands of more women who have integrity and have good intent and want to use that money as the tool that it is. But we have all these layers of stories of behaviors upon us, which really then impacts our businesses and how we show up in our businesses, our visibility, how we sell, all those things like that. So yeah, it was a really big catalyst for the work that I do now. But it was also it's made me who I am. That relationship's absolutely made me who I am. But it was a very hard thing to go through. And I think what you said then about my mom and my mom being in charge of the finances was interesting, because a lot of the dynamics, my mom's very much like in control. She's controlling the household, the family, the finances. And a lot of those dynamics replayed in that relationship I had with my ex that was really toxic, because I was sort of outsourcing the control to him. So in a way, I let a lot of it happen because I was just replaying the dynamics that I've been used to being part of, not putting the blame on like my mom or anybody like that, but just when you are able to reflect on it and you look at the dynamics at play, and you're like, oh, I'm replicating this here because I think that's how it should be. Somebody else is in control of the finances as a kid. Somebody else is in control of the finances as an adult. So it's kind of like picking one up and putting the other one down, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You mentioned as well that it was almost like you said that, the idea that money had to be earned, but it was for the adults, that you kind of needed permission and someone else needed to kind of look after it for you. Yeah,
absolutely. And how the financial control sort of happened in that relationship and flipped So at the beginning, I had a job, I was earning money. We ended up moving out together. It was awful living with two of his friends. And I was the only one with a job, and I had a car, and I ran us around. And we used to go to like the supermarket really late at night to get all the offers, like really cheap stuff. And I was like bailing him out. He had so much debt. He was in so much debt. And I was bailing him out and giving him money and paying for everything and paying for us to go on holiday. And we had bailiffs coming to the door, and I was dealing that, and I was like 17, 18. And then that switched. So he was using me for my money then. And then when he started earning more money, he would belittle me for my money. And it very much became like, well, I'm the big shot now. You need me for this. And sort of very much kind of reduced me and isolated me, and I ended up working for him. And it was very much, he was controlling everything really within our relationship situation. But it was interesting how it flipped and how I was used both ways to kind of and that kind of didn't really occur to me until I was thinking about this podcast, actually, after our initial conversation. And I was like, oh, it wasn't even as straightforward as I talked about with you before. It was even more layered and complex.
There was more, there was more to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then this is the thing I think you mentioned earlier, is that actually it wasn't as clear cut.
Yeah. It's the stuff that's said, but it's also the stuff that's not said and that's implied, that you then alter and shift your behaviours around that sometimes, rather than what's overtly said to you. It's what's withheld. It's what's taken away. It's what's then thrown at you. And then you have to respond and react to it. It's and I think we're getting better as a society understanding what coercive control is, and understanding the dynamics at play, like even in the wider society, like the entitlement some males have towards females. Like a friend of mine was followed last week and spoken to in a way that she did not want to be, and the police just aren't interested because nothing quote unquote actually happened, except something did actually happen. And so if that's like the precursor to it, and that's just out in the street between strangers, what's actually going on in dynamics of people who know each other well. And you know, it's we're definitely better as a society than we were. Like, I didn't understand that's what I was dealing with when I was that age.
No,
I had no idea. And like my family didn't either. They knew something wasn't right. They knew I was unhappy and they didn't like him particularly. But they didn't fully understand the extent of it because I didn't tell anybody. Like, you know, you think, especially at that age, especially when you're both following the patterns that you've seen your parents go through. So like both sets of our parents met young, were together and got married. So we were like, oh, well, that's what you do. That's the blueprint. That's what you think you're meant to do. And so we did get married, and that marriage lasted 9 months. So, you know, it didn't last very long. But we had the big wedding, like big puffy fairy tale dress in like a big stately home and all this stuff. And it just shouldn't have happened. I'm glad it did, because I learned so much from that experience. And I'm glad it didn't happen when I was older and if there was children involved, because I cannot imagine how you unpick the pieces and pick yourself up from that when there's a real tie there. For me, like the house was the biggest tie, and financially that was a disaster because we bought it when the market was high and then got into negative equity. So I was tied to him financially a lot longer than we were actually maritally tied together. So my divorce came through before the house was sorted, and that was just so frustrating because that impacted my credit. I had debt collectors come into my property after I'd moved on because I was still accountable for that money. And then I got a CCJ on my record, I was then panicked it was going to impact my other decisions that I was making in my life at the time. So it's a real big mess.
Yeah, and that sort of extra financial stress that's, you know, even when you've kind of tried to cut ties and move on, you're still being exposed to risk and almost punishment from the system just for your association.
I mean, the legalities mixed with the emotions of everything. It's you can't separate the two. Like, it's such an emotive subject anyway. Money is such an emotive subject, and then you've got like a failed relationship and the connection between the two. Like, it's just mad. Like, trying to unpick all that stuff.
There's the practicalities that you're immediately in trying to sort it, but then there's also that, as you've probably worked through over years now, is that emotional imprint and the sort of psychological and nervous system and all of that is like, then you have to deal with, of what's happened and also realize what's happened.
And I think as well, when you're in that relationship and you feel in your gut inside bodily, you feel something is off, you feel like it's not right or it shouldn't feel this hard, but you think that that's how it should be, or you put this person on a pedestal, or you've read all these fairy tales and this is how your life's meant to work out, or you've seen this how your parents are and you trying to emulate that. And I think it's so hard within yourself to recognize that, and there's kind of like an internal bargaining that has to happen for you to recognize that actually, no, I don't want to be in this situation anymore. This is not okay.
Yeah, that's it. It's like you'd modeled what you thought was the right thing to do and the way to kind of be successful. And I guess people wouldn't have necessarily realized that there was a problem. And that's where from the outside, it looks all idyllic and wonderful. Yeah.
And I think as well, and this is just a very personal observation, how my ex was externally and with other people was very, very different to how we were internally. And I think when somebody creates a case for themselves and creates a persona that is so well liked and thought of in certain ways by certain people and spreads a narrative and spreads a perception, it's very hard to then go against that. And I think people are actually probably more aware of that now with the rise of social media and people portraying different parts of their lives online. I think actually that's been good because people are like, well, we know this isn't all real.
Yeah, we're much more savvy to the idea.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's actually a positive that's come from socials and
there's a bit more skepticism, isn't there, about what's going on.
For sure.
Yeah, something interesting as well about, just from kind of what I know about money and coercive control, which isn't loads, but it's things that I've sort of picked up, is around the idea that actually it can be a safety thing because it's almost like what they call financial fawning, which is where it's safer in the relationship to give the money, to provide, to, appease the other person, because it would feel unsafe either physically or in that dynamic and that emotionally and your own sort of psychological safety to say no and say, no, I'm not bailing you out. And there's pressure there to do it. And it feels safer to go along with that and go, okay, I'll sort it. I'll pay for that, etc. It's risky to put up that barrier. And so, you could say, well, there's a choice, but there's not really a choice because there's consequences to saying no, essentially. There's consequences to not helping or not, allowing or calling out the behaviour. Yeah. It's like, well, what do I do there? Am I equipped to deal with the fallout? And if you've been, in some ways isolated from people, and it's really difficult to say, actually, this is what's going on.
And also, like, your strength and your internal power is so ground down. Like, I was, and that's part of it. Like, people who take that controlling and abusive kind of lead in the relationship, they are attracted to the power and brightness of you in the first place. And then they want to take it for their own and they want to use it, and they grind you down and grind you down and grind you down until there's barely anything left of you. And then they abuse you for it. So it's such a, I don't even know like how to even describe that, but it's just almost like your own power. If you're somebody who is like that, but doesn't have a lot of self-confidence or is playing out something and there's, you're trying to get something right, It's sort of, you're attached, and that it's so hard to get out of that, because by the time you realize, you're like so squashed, your inner strength is so small that you're just like, I don't think I can do this, because you're right, this space, even though it's horrible and hard, and I don't, I can't imagine trying to live out the rest of my life like this. It feels safer than the alternative.
Yeah. Gosh. So how did you get out?
Honestly, he said, I'm done with you. I'm done. And I think that's because I don't know any of this for fact, but just sort of the relationship was really really tailing off, like really bad things were happening, and he was spending, we had joint money, I was working for him, and he was spending it all. And I was kind of like, this is not okay, like this is my money too. So there was a slight switch in me, and I think he began a relationship with somebody else, or he was at least involved with other people. And at that point, he was the one who said, I'm done, this is it. And I think, and actually I'm very grateful to him for doing that, because I think part of me is just so adamant, and I think there's potentially a part of being neurodiverse in this. So I'm autistic. Like, I did not know this at the time. I've been very recently diagnosed, but there is a big correlation between autistic women getting into toxic, coercive relationships. Did not know any of this, but I'm a stat. What do you want? So I think I would have just continued. Until I don't know when. Like, I can't see anything good happening from it, and I think it could have got a lot worse. So actually, I'm very grateful for him for sort of releasing me, because he was done with me. He'd sucked me dry basically, and was done. So and then after that was a whole load of other stuff, because I obviously, he wanted to divorce, but I had to organize the whole thing, obviously. But then he just kept refusing to sign the papers. Like, and my solicitor, she was like, this is actually a practice record. Like, nobody has refused or lost papers as much as this guy has. And that was all part of the control as well. It was like, I'm done with you, but I'm still going to play games. So that was interesting, when somebody in that position who's helped women and men get divorced from these situations, being like, then it's things like that, and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't normal. This isn't what most people do.
What you're up against then, when you see that in front of other people.
And it what I find mad is, we're very young at this point, and he was behaving like that, and I'm like, why? Like, what has he been exposed to? And I think now I see what my niece is exposed to, like online, and how she's spoken to, and sort of the boys she's in friendship groups with, and how they speak to each other. And I'm like, oh my God, like I was unusual. This seems way more rife now, like way more acceptable behavior than what was happening. Like, what was happening to me is now deemed as acceptable. And I'm like, this is just mad. Like, how have we got in a position like this, where how girls are spoken to is just so disgusting, and they accept it. They're like, oh, that, I deserve that. And I'm like, why are we in this situation?
And that's quite depressing in a way, isn't it? That it's almost like you'd think hopefully we're progressing, but you see it with all this horrible sort of toxic influencer stuff about men, don't you? And it's just it's not good, and that's why we need people to know that it's not acceptable.
Exactly.
That this is it's more in some ways it's more advanced in terms of the subtleties of things, and so you don't notice. You think, oh, maybe that's okay, and there's a lot of work to do there in terms of helping people, especially younger people that haven't got as much experience of what's going on. What was that like then, to kind of get back on your feet and be on your own? What kind of happened through that?
That was
phase?
that was a very odd feeling. And honestly, I can't remember a lot of it. Like, I've blocked a lot of it out. I went straight back into the whole dynamic with my parents and them supporting me and having to bail me out, because I was totally financially dependent on this guy. Like, I was working with him, for him, in his company. Like, I had no financial power of my own at all. So straight back into that dynamic of the adults have the money, they'll help. And I'm so privileged to be in that situation. So privileged. But at the same time, that also comes with pitfalls too. And actually, my mum and dad were really good, because they said, you've always got a space at home. There's always a place for you here. But we don't actually think it will be the best for you mentally, emotionally, to move back home. Let's see if we can get you a place. So I did end up living with my ex for 5 months before this actually resolved. And that was horrific.
Gosh.
Because we were separated. It was all kinds of weird. He was basically sleeping all day. I was trying to find a job and then did get a job. So it was then working to afford a property of my own. So then I moved out and lived on my own for a bit with my parents' support. And it was honestly like, I remember going down to visit my sister in London and standing on London Bridge and feeling like my arm was missing. Like, it was as if a part of myself was not there. And that was just so strange. And it took a long time to feel like I was in control of me, like having the freedom to do what I wanted and to go where I wanted and see who I wanted it was overwhelming. Like, I just didn't know what to do with that. And like, being able to have the choice, even if I didn't do anything, that was just mad. Like, I just couldn't comprehend it. And I think it was only a combination of time and gradually doing what I wanted to do that helped me get back to some kind of level of normal. But it was time, basically.
Yeah. And such a sudden change of kind of being controlled to having your freedom back, but kind of not knowing what to do with that freedom.
I think that was my gateway to like self-development and nervous system regulation and things like that, because I was like, what the heck is going on? And I think because I'm quite a curious person, I'm sort of reflected on things as I could at that time. And then obviously the more space there is between the situations happening, and the more you are able to reflect and the more you know about yourself, the more you then understand what's happened and how you co-created something, or what's, how you've got yourself away from it and what your nervous system is actually doing. So I think actually that was my way in to eventually now doing what I do.
Yeah, totally. And we've touched a little bit on, that this is unfortunately in the culture that we've got going on at the moment, this kind of behavior. So what do you wish people understood about coercive control?
I think if you feel that it's off, or your body knows way more than we give ourselves credit for, and this is a huge amount of like why I do my work with human design, because that is very much a bodily response, an embodied thing rather than a logical thought through thing, because a lot of what our body actually responds to logically doesn't make sense. I would say if your body's telling you something is off, it is off, and listen to it. There is so much more support out there for coercive control than there used to be. So if you just educate yourself on it and read about it, and if there's somebody in your life saying, are you all right? Like, we think something might be off. It's so easy to be offended by that. And it's so easy to feel like they're not supporting you when actually they are supporting you. So if somebody's flagging that to you, maybe just do a bit of reading around what might be occurring, because education, knowledge is your power. And there is so much more support than there used to be, for sure. Because like I say, people are starting to recognise what it is. We're a long way from perfect, but it's not as hidden as it used to be. And I think as well, there is something to add here about the onus of safety shouldn't be put back onto women who are potentially in a situation where they are experiencing coercive control or
financial abuse or some other type of abuse within a relationship, domestic violence or anything like that, like the onus of the safety shouldn't be pushed back onto the victims, for want of a better word, the receivers of that abuse. But also, we have, like, our strength as women is in our community and the collective and the conversations that we have. So I think it's a tricky one. This, like, there's so much nuance here, there's so many layers to it, and I think we can't just say we have to take that responsibility for ourselves and for our friends. There should be bigger systemic change, but while that happens, we need to take care of each other as well.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely agree with you on this. And thank you for bringing that up and making it clear. And what we're talking about here is the awareness and community. And we need lots of systemic change, but helping people recognise patterns and supporting each other. It's not about shifting blame onto those experiencing harm. We'll put in the show notes some links to resources if this is something that you're listening and you're thinking, actually, I think I might need to explore this. So there'll be some resources if you need extra support. I think the point you made actually about, if people are asking kind of, are you okay, etc., is something is, and we mentioned about like neurodiversity as well. And perhaps if you feel that you could be at risk of coercive control, is to say to, some trusted friends, when I'm in relationships, can you tell me if you notice anything strange about my behaviour? If it's someone you trust, so perhaps say that it's not such an out of the blue conversation if someone's going, hang on a minute, are you okay? This seems a bit odd. But maybe if you have somebody you can trust to say, keep an eye on me when I get into this relationship, please, and perhaps we should all do. I have heard other people have mentioned this, but actually if we can all be much more aware, particularly as women, to have each other's back about this and to realise that actually the biggest risk is we won't realise that it's happened until we're fairly stuck. That's the risk, isn't it? Until we're very far into the situation, we won't realise what's happened to us. And actually, perhaps there's ways that we can call things out, offer support, like to each other, as well as the sort of professional options and charities and intervention and legal routes. As as a society, we need to be, and obviously we need to call it out. And particularly men. Obviously, it could be women doing the coercive control as well. But we need people to, we obviously need the lobbying and the power. More powers to stop it happening and to kind of stop this toxic masculinity culture thing that's going on. But it's something that I think we've got to be ourselves just looking out for signs with people we know to kind of be aware. The biggest risk is that you're suffering on your own, isn't it? And you feel trapped and you're isolated. So having that, it's not as straightforward as just telling someone it's all fixed, but it's that isolation seems to be a really big feature. Yeah,
definitely. And I'm very grateful for my friends who did not give up on me, who were like, no. And actually what you said there about having people you trust and having that conversation potentially before you get into whatever relationship, your friends know you so much better than your family does. And like, you will probably take concern from your friends in a very different way to how you would take it from your family, depending on your family dynamics. I know I did. Because like when my parents raised their concerns, I was very dismissive of that and very, you're trying to control me as well kind of thing. Whereas when my friends did, it was a very different level of conversation. So yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah. And if we kind of fast forward a bit to the now, has this changed how you think about money like today?
Yes,
the money aspect?
No. So I think it has obviously had a massive impact on my business and how I am as a business owner, because as you know, if you want a successful business, you've got to sell things. And I've had to do a lot of work around my relationship with money and my relationship particularly with selling, because I still feel like for well, not necessarily now, but especially when I was first starting out, there was a real manipulation I felt had to happen rather than a reciprocal energetic exchange. So yeah, I've had to do a lot of work around that. And I think money has always been like a safe thing for me, like having money. And I think that comes back to my childhood and like, oh, we need the money to live. So like kind of a hoarding kind of attitude. So I kind of see the safety in it. But also that it's hard to get, like it's stressful and you have to work for somebody else and work very hard and people can take it away from you and all that. So there's been a real, I don't think that work ever ends, but that's the work that to have a successful business, you're being asked to do, like your business is asking you to do that. And that being visible piece as well, because that indirectly linked to the financial side, being safe to be seen when you've been told or nobody's interested in what you have to say and you've been belittled so much, like that's been a real learning curve as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably those two things. But I think that the work is never really done with money, right? Because we give it is such a loaded topic.
Oh yeah.
We give it so much to hold emotionally, mentally, like we give it, it's like an inanimate thing, isn't it? Yet we load it with so much stuff. So I think that's always
there's so many layers as well, aren't there, to this? And you know, it's interesting that actually you gravitated towards like entrepreneurship, you know, again, because it's almost like that is a way of having more control than an employer, isn't it? In a job, you actually do have a lot more control of how you earn, what you do with the money, how you invest it, which is brilliant. But it also comes with so many more touch points with money rather than just getting a paycheck and that's that. It's like you have to think about pricing and conversations about money and what you're going to pay yourself and taxes and like how to, you know, if you've been in a position where you're thinking, actually, I need to stockpile the money in case of problems, then it'd be really difficult to kind of invest or to spend it without feeling unsafe potentially. But I think what you get from that is more financial independence, would you say, in terms of that business journey? You're creating your own wealth essentially.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
Really important.
It's the autonomy behind it. Like I didn't have that autonomy. And I think what you said there, like, yeah, of course I've gravitated to working for myself and entrepreneurship. I mean, I wrote that little price list when I was 5 years old, so the signs were always there. But then this, like the whole situation that I've been through, having that taken away, having that power taken away, and being in a situation where I didn't have any control of my own, probably has like really fast tracked me into that. Like I've then since then I had like a corporate career and stuff, but the autonomy wasn't necessarily there. And I got to a point with that where I was like, I'm not enjoying this because I'm not being seen. I'm not being listened to. I'm working to other people's agendas. I'm doing work and redoing work and redoing work. And I'm never actually seeing the end result of this. And I'm not making a difference. And I've got so much that I can offer somebody else to make a real difference, which will then make a real difference to their world. And like the ripple effect of that is massive. And what am I doing? So, you know, it wasn't an easy jump to do, but I'm really glad I did it because it gives me so much more freedom, but it also means I'm able to make more of a difference than I ever could working for somebody else.
Yeah, that I'm sure that will resonate a lot with people, that frustration of when you're in a job, it's kind of like you just can't make those changes that you might want to, and then you're who you're helping, what it's all about, and that completely flips when you're on your own thing and you get to call the shots and really align the mission, which I think is very interesting with what you're doing and how you've taken, you know, this experience of what you've been through, which has been really, you know, really difficult, but actually the message you've brought through with it is around that financial independence being so important for women and to sort of reclaim that power. And I know we said with your intro around the human design, and I think it'd be really interesting just to explore the relationship there with the human design and money and what drew you to human design.
I came to human design totally randomly via a coaching client in 2020. And human design is a modality that brings together a lot of other ancient Eastern and Western modalities and creates a kind of like 5D matrix view of your energetic blueprint. So who you are designed to be, what you're designed to do, and how to go about it. So it's an amazing framework to use, not just for your life, but particularly in business, because we get so inundated by what this online guru says, and this, you should do this, and this marketing bro says this. And it's like, actually, are you designed to do it that way? Like, let's have a look. How does your energy naturally function? What life season are you in? Like, what's actually going on? How are you meant to speak? How are you meant to feel about money? All that kind of stuff, because there's so much powerful information in there that is a real game changer when it comes to how you actually create your own business for a sustainable business. Not just like, I'm here for a quick win. I'm interested in like longevity and sustainability and legacy, rather than just, oh, I've made $1 million and now I'm off to the Bahamas. Like, okay, that's fine, but you've probably got a bigger purpose and a bigger why behind you. So let's focus on that instead. So yeah, and I think human design, the specific aspects of it where you can tap into your money and your relationship with money. So you have your abundance keys, which live in your G center. If anybody's aware of that, if not, hit me up and I will explain that more. But so it's a real good way of exploring and reflecting upon, as amongst other things, your relationship with money and how money works for you. And there's things like your planetary placements as well, and what gates they're in that can really impact how you feel about money and what needs clearing and things like that. So it's just a really superb tool to use when it comes to building a business, particularly if you are a woman and you've been socialized as female from birth, because we get all these stories, we have all these experiences as a human as well. And it just gets all layered upon who we're actually truly designed to be. And your human design is a great way of exploring and imploding that and carving a different way forward.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking this is so important for, a lot of the time we see tips of what we should do with our money, and there's a certain thing of like your routine you should have, or how you should spend, or how you should, manage your bank accounts. And sometimes people follow those, quite often actually, and it just doesn't work for them, and they get frustrated because the way that they are approaching money and trying to follow the steps that they've been told is the route to success doesn't work for them. And then they think, well, I must not be very good at this because I'm not warming to this way of working or this way of doing it, or what somebody's told me I should do. And actually what the human design does is it says there's not one blueprint that everyone follows. Exactly. You've got your own blueprint, and actually you've got your own preferences and the style, and like naturally what's going to attune to you is going to be very different. And I think that's where it's very, very powerful, because it enables you to say, oh, that's okay, that way was not for me, but there's these other things that much better suit my makeup. And I think that's essentially what I understand. Obviously I know very little compared to you, but in terms of it, it's a way of actually stopping all of that shame of like, oh, I'm rubbish because I can't do this, and going, what is it about me that actually makes sense? Who I'm supposed
absolutely.
To be.
And because it holds so much nuance and duality, like it's so multifaceted, like you as a human are. Whereas on the internet, like the internet is where nuance goes to die. Like there is no nuance. It's very pithy. It's very black and white. It's very this or this, because that's all that there's space for, because we've been conditioned out of any attention span whatsoever. And we're going to see a real kickback from that, because people are like, but that, it doesn't work. And I'm fed up of feeling like I'm the problem, when actually the information is the problem, because it's not broad enough and deep enough. And I'm broad and deep. So I need what suits me.
Yeah, exactly that. It treats you like a robot, and we're not robots at all. We're very multifaceted beings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. And just tell us a little bit about how people can explore, more about human design and things with you. And is there anything in particular you've got, or anything, to point people to?
Yeah, of course. So come and see me over on Instagram. I'm at Emily Armitage _ or over on LinkedIn. It's just my name on there. And there's a whole, I have so much content around what human design is and how you can use it as a leader, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. And there's various free things that I have, free resources, as well as some masterclasses and sort of lower ticket stuff, which can really help explain what your human design is for you. So if you've got I'm human design curious, for example, your energy type and your profile lines, for example, but you're like, what else does this actually mean? I've got some resources that can really help you there.
Amazing. I think what's really powerful about that is there's lots of people potentially that you could find that talk about human design. Not many people who talk about human design for women business owners. And that's where I think your specific offer is going to be very relevant to people listening here. So, yeah.
I basically use it as a powerful business lens. Like, I don't do it for your life, although that's like a byproduct. I don't do it for your kids. I don't do it like whatever. It's literally as a business lens. So if you're interested in that, you know where I am.
Amazing. We'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes so people can just click through and come into your world. And yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, a really big thank you, Emily, for sharing today. I know it's difficult. It's a difficult topic, isn't it, essentially, this stuff. And I really appreciate you sharing, you know.
Oh no, my pleasure.
So
I've got to a point now, like, it was so long ago, and I just know that sharing my story will help people, because people don't expect me to have been in that situation, and it can happen to anybody. And the more people that are aware of it, and there's less shame around it, because shame dies in the light. Like, when we share these stories, that's where we really help each other. So thank you for having me on, and thank you for letting me share. I
really appreciate you being open to sharing. You know, the more people that understand this, and there'll also be people that probably have been through something similar. Like, if anyone's sort of berating themselves and they've been through dynamics like this, it's no wonder that the money stuff has been hard, because the money is part of the control and you know, acknowledging that it's big stuff, essentially. So
thank you for listening.
Thank you so much to Emily for sharing her story so generously. Go gently with yourself after this one. If anything in today's episode has brought something up for you, or you need further support, full details and helpline numbers and links are in the show notes. Emily shared her personal experience and perspective of a past relationship. No individuals are identified. This conversation is shared in the public interest to raise awareness of coercive control and financial abuse.